there, friends. Welcome back to another brand new episode of Silver Screen Cinema Classics, where this month we're going farther back than we ever have before. Over 100 years, in fact, to analyse and discuss the Harold Lloyd silent era comedy classic, Safety Last. I am your regular host, Michael Wilson, never seen scaling buildings to escape the cops, but sadly far too often seen doing a retail shift like the one the boy deals with in this movie. With me for this is my co-host, the person who chose this movie and is hoping not to be dangled from a clock face for his choice. It's DK.
Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm not too bad, mate. I've been looking forward to this one, to be honest. So yeah, I'm interested to see what you think.
Yeah, fair enough. Cool. I should say, it's just the two of us this month, as we sometimes do, and often is the case when DK is trying to give me a cinematic classics education and expand my horizons a bit. And yeah, that's where we are this time. I'd never seen this film before, and it was DK who proposed it for the Classics podcast. So before we dive fully into it, the very first question I have to ask DK is, why Safety Last? What made you choose this film? What makes it a favourite of yours?
Oh, I just love. I've got a particular affection for Harold Lloyd in general. I grew up watching his movies. It's weird, but as a youngster, I never really got into Chaplin or Keaton or even Laurel and Hardy, Marx Brothers, that kind of thing, because I don't know, they just didn't appeal to me. Obviously, they do these days. They're rightly, I do recognize them as the greats that they are, but I never really got into them. But Harold Lloyd, I mean, I'm speaking to a certain, age here. I am of a generation where in the evenings, I believe it was BBC Two. I don't know if they'd, just got the rights for that, and that was pretty much it. But they used to have a show on called "Hooray for Harold Lloyd."
Oh,
and and it was a regular tea time thing, I believe, on BBC Two. And it was just like episodes with clips from his movies. And I remember me and my friends really getting into that and talking about it in the playground. I'm going back a long time now. You're looking at late 70s, early 80s kind of thing.
okay.
I am pretty, but I am old. So, yeah, it was... We kind of got it... Both me and my friends got addicted to that. And Harold Lloyd always me to seem. I know it's kind of the type because of the roles he generally plays in the movies, but he's not one that everybody considers a classic. And to me, he's always been that kind of silent screen underdog. And
yeah,
for that's endearing to me because I can watch. I mean, we're going to get to it later, but I can watch his films these days. And they still make me laugh, and I think, obviously, he's well known in Hollywood and that kind of thing. But when you ask someone about silent film stars, you inevitably get Chaplin, you inevitably get Keaton, but not many people recognize Lloyd as one of the greats, and to me, he'll always be one of the greats.
I think it's the sort of thing where you're absolutely right. It's not really necessarily mentioned in the same breath, but I think a lot more appreciation has kind of grown for him over the years. And I have to admit, I didn't know who he was, and my very first exposure to him was the parody version from Futurama, the Harold Zoid. If you've ever seen that episode. So it was only when I learned that was based on a real person, and was like, oh, okay, and that's. Like you said, that's when I was like, oh, there was this person called Harold Lloyd. Because like I said, if it had been, a parody of Chaplin or Buster Keaton or whatever, then I would immediately have clicked. But I think, as I said, he's gotten more and more appreciated over the years and starting to be mentioned a little bit more in the same breath. It's just a shame that he wasn't really, because, yeah, he's doing the same work, really, isn't he? So I can see
exactly.
Where you're
I mean, if you're into that kind of thing, I mean, if you're not into the silent era, you're not into those kind of vaudeville slapstick antics kind of thing, you're never going to be a fan, but you're also never really going to be a fan of Chaplin. Yes, his iconography is well known, but outside of people that are genuinely into that kind of thing, and alas, I don't want to make a sweeping generalization, but I think modern audiences, especially the younger modern audiences, have a tendency sometimes to, alas, look at films from this era and think, "Oh God, no," which is a great shame because I think some of the jokes, if you're into that kind of slapstick humor, I think they work just as well as anything that you'll see these days. And I just got a great love for that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean, and I mean we will talk about it a little bit. But there were certainly things in here that I laughed at, even if it was only a little giggle and stuff. And it's sort of like I said, it works. You don't think to yourself, "Oh, this is just horribly outdated," even though it's over 100 years ago. 103 years now. There's still jokes that kind of that work culturally and across time for the majority of the film. Like I said, it's kind of weird how the whole retail shift situation. That was painfully relatable to me. The kind of, the last customer that's taken up your time and you want to go home. I was like, oh my God, I've lived this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird that you mention it, to be honest, because my parents, they're into films, and they're not the biggest fan of modern day cinema. So I suggested this to them. And I said, I've got to watch this for the show. Do you want to watch this? And neither of them wanted to watch it just because they went, no, that's too old.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah. I think there is a stigma. I mean, I've mentioned it before to you personally. I don't know if I have on the podcast, that my parents are very similar. My dad in particular will not watch any black and white movie. He refers to them as, if you'll pardon the language, black and white shite, and will not put it on because apparently in his mind it equates with not being good. And I'm just like, that's such a terrible attitude. There are so many great black and white movies that just writing the whole thing off is like, nope, too old, black and white, not going to watch it. So I would never get him to sit down and watch something like this because black and white and silent era, he'd consider it like, no, too dated, not that kind of thing at all. And again, it is a shame. So I hope things like this podcast get people to give them a try. And I'm pleased that I did it. I mean, without giving my opinions on this particular thing, I haven't seen nearly enough of this kind of thing for a film fan and for somebody with a film studies degree. And I'm having nothing against the kind of silent vaudeville comedy type eras. I'd love to watch more, to be honest. So yeah, I mean, I don't know why we don't culturally regard them a little bit higher. Like you said, it's kind of regarded as sort of a silly throwaway thing occasionally, and or that horribly dated thing. And yeah, it's a shame. It really is.
It is because without those films, we wouldn't have the movie industry of today. I mean, whether you look on that as a good thing or a bad thing, but everybody has their favorite films from these days, and a lot of these films wouldn't have existed if not for the silent movie era.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I mean, without putting the cart before the horse, as it were, I mean, the stunts of the silent era, we owe a lot to that. I mean, this is well before you would have professional stuntmen and Tom Cruise trying to kill himself in every movie, but there's some really cool things. And I mean, I remember, even though I haven't seen that many movies, I am absolutely in awe of the famous Buster Keaton sequence where the house collapses around him, and he just he knows that the open window is going to land and it's all fine and he's going to be safe. And it's like, okay, you can plan for it and you can have it worked out, but it still takes a heck of a lot of bravery to stand there and just know, the wall of a house is falling on you, but don't worry, you're going to be fine. I'm like, geez, man, that's I kind of appreciate
in the setup, really.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, the same thing applies to Harold Lloyd here, hanging from a clock face somewhere, even if it wasn't all him, it's still geez, man.
You look at some of the stunts like the clock face, or it's not as obviously well known from the movie itself, even if you had a fan of the movie, but his friend climbing up the side of the goddamn building.
Yeah.
He's just saying, oh my God, you never see this these days. Health and safety would have a fit.
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah, you'd never have, or it would be just terrible CGI. It just wouldn't look. It would look terrible. It wouldn't be the same. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not sure if I would necessarily regard it as the height of comedy, because more so I tend to watch this and be like, "Are you friggin' mad?" as opposed to laughing hysterically at it. But it's still, you can still appreciate it on some level, even if that level is, well, you're an idiot, but all right. So yeah. So talking about it as we kind of were, the next question that I wanted to ask before, again, we dive deep into the film. Are there any other silent era favorites that you think we should check out? If whether you like Safety Last or not, is there anything else that you would say is a gem of the era?
Well, I mean, naturally, you are going to gravitate, as I said, towards things like Chaplin. You are going to gravitate towards things like Keaton. So I do think, looking back, uh, I think we should definitely cover one of those if possible. At the meantime, I'm also a huge fan. It's not exactly silent, but I'm also I grew to be a huge fan of the Marx Brothers.
Okay, yeah.
From Night of the Opera, Horse Feathers, Duck Soup.
Mm-hmm.
You take any of them, and I think they're, again, the wisecracks from Groucho still hold up incredibly well.
That's another thing where I've seen clips, but I haven't seen the film. But I'm sure, is it from Duck Soup where you get the fantastic the mirror sequence with the mirror of these kind of
yeah,
he's doing like half and half, and then the reflection completes the thing, and it's visual genius whilst also being funny, and kind of like, people don't appreciate this, this 100-year-old type thing is such a cool idea that you could still laugh at and still get today.
I love Groucho's take on things like, will you marry me? Are you rich? Answer the second question first.
Yeah.
I just love stuff like that. It's
see, whereas I just like visual gags, because I remember also the Charlie Chaplin one of the forks in the potato doing the little dance. I'm a sucker for just stupid visual gags like that,
and I'm sure there are people that think, that will look at that and think that was originally done in Benny and June kind of thing. It's
that's what I mean. Yeah, these ideas that people they've seen it done, because I think I saw maybe Morecambe and Wise doing the old Marx Brothers kind of reflection thing, and I was like, well, he's ripping off a classic there, but I don't want a generation of people thinking you came up with it.
That's
okay.
true.
It takes a lot to perform it, and I'm not taking that away from you. And the fact that you knew that anyway means you have an education in, like I said, the classics, the comedy greats, but you didn't come up with the idea.
Yeah, I think, and what happens is that, without that kind of little touchstone of certain generations that refer back to these films or that introduce these films to a newer audience, which, to me, it's a shame, simply because, if it weren't for people like Criterion and things like that, a lot of these things would just rot away on YouTube. And yeah, they're fine if you're going looking for that kind of thing. But in all fairness, how many modern moviegoers are going to be looking for that kind of thing? And I think it's without that generation that can pass their love of the silent era on to newer audiences, it's unfortunate that a lot of these movies are just gonna fade away.
But no, I mean, that's the kind of the last message that I want to leave this little section with, and for cinema classics in general, is that don't think that just because a film is 103 years old that it's got no value anymore or it won't be relatable. Because like I said, there were moments in this that I really did relate heavily to, and there's something kind of weird and kind of almost magical about seeing something relatable that is so old and being like, this is like looking like time travel in a weird kind of way, that you're looking at this unimaginable length of time, well over our lifetime in a sense, and yet these are just people living their lives in the same locations and everything, and it's the closest we're going to get to being able to literally see through time in a weird way, not to get all kind of bizarre about it, but it's just it was weird and kind of appreciated on that level as well. And it is still universal things that they're dealing with. Like I said, Safety Last does deal with a lot of stuff that you can fully understand, whether it's working a retail shift or foolishly doing things that are breakneck and stupid, or even the old playground kick me joke is from this movie. It's kind of, whoa, like this is probably the very first time that ever happened, and yet that was something we did in school without even knowing what it was.
Yeah, I think as you say, if you see this film and you've ever worked in retail, you completely get it.
Oh yeah. The not just, the last customer thing is incredibly relatable, because that was always the worst, kind of like, I want to go home. But the busy day that he's having as well, when it's just like, it seems like he's swarmed by people in the whatever it is he's selling, the haberdashery, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, and he's just like,
the bit that always makes me laugh is where he gets called to the office and the other guy takes over and he says to the other guy, good luck. You see him voice it. And then you just see this guy getting completely ragged and practically dragged over the counter by these people in this sale.
Yeah, I love it. My favorite bit in that, because it was just such an unexpected joke, and it's probably a little bit crass, but I couldn't help but laugh, is when they're all kind of swarming each other, and then one of them gets knocked down, and Harold Lloyd just goes 8, 9, 10, knock out. Yeah. like the end of a boxing match. I was just like, that is kind of funny, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's times I've wanted to do that when people have been piling in for their free crap or whatever, and I've worked in the shop, and it's been like, yeah, TKO, whatever. But yeah, cool. So, we may as well dive in and talk about this film specifically. We kind of already have started. So, just to set the stage, then, Safety Last is a 1923 American silent romantic comedy film starring Harold Lloyd, as we've said. It includes one of the most famous images from the silent film era, Lloyd clutching the hands of a large clock as he dangles from the outside of a skyscraper above moving traffic. The film was highly successful and critically hailed, and it cemented Lloyd's status as a major figure in early motion pictures. It is still popular at revivals, and it is viewed today as one of the great film comedies. So it has a reputation. So, any thoughts before we dive into the BTS that you haven't said yet, DK?
No, I'm just glad that it is still getting airtime somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, as we always do, I'm going to start then with a little bit of behind-the-scenes information about this film. Not a lot, but just a little bit of background for you. Hopefully it won't be too dry. So the film's title, as you probably know, is a play on the common expression safety first, which describes the adoption of safety measures as a means to avoid accidents, especially in workplaces. Lloyd performed some of the climbing stunts himself, despite having lost a thumb and forefinger 4 years earlier in a film accident, which I did not know. But again, appreciation, man. You've already lost a thumb and part of a finger, and you're still doing stupid stuff like this. Kudos, dude. So Lloyd hanging from a giant clock on the corner of a building was seen as an iconic image for him, though it was achieved through a certain degree of improvisation. Lloyd performed most of his own stunt work, but a circus performer was used when the boy hangs by a rope, and a stunt double, sometimes Bill Strother, who played Limpy Bill and was a steeplejack who inspired the sequence when Lloyd saw him climbing, was used in long shots. So weirdly, even though he wasn't, doing it in the movie, he was extra-textually, shall we say, on the outside. So stuntman Harvey Parry also appeared in the climactic sequence, a fact he revealed only after Lloyd's death. In the 1980 Thames television series Hollywood, he discussed at length how the stunts were achieved. Did you watch that, DK, out of curiosity?
I didn't know about that. I wonder if it's on my ITV player or something.
I'm going to have to look it up and see if we can find it, because it's the sort of thing that I can imagine you probably would have watched it one afternoon. I wasn't born yet, so I have an excuse. So.
Yeah, cheers for that, dude.
Safety Last was one of... I'm just moving straight on. So, Safety Last was one of many silent films to film in a one-block alley near Hollywood and Cahuenga Boulevard. Apologies if I pronounced that wrong. The alley was later renamed Chaplain Keaton Lloyd Alley in recognition of this and other films. So, yeah, Lloyd is mentioned in the same breath as those two when it comes to the actual location that was filmed. And, Safety Last is one of many works from 1923 that notably entered the public domain in the United States in 2019, the first time any works had done so in 20 years. As such, it is available to watch in full, free, on YouTube, and embedded on the film's Wikipedia page. But it has also been released in multiple home video formats, most notably and readily available via a Criterion Collection DVD and Blu-ray release, which I didn't watch, but I know you do own. So, yeah. So you're the one bragging this time about your home media collection.
Yeah, this is a strange reversal of fortune, to be honest. It is a very nice. It is a very nice restoration. So, hats off to Criterion for that. It was impressive.
Have you had a chance to check out any of the special features or anything?
I haven't. I was really tempted, but it was like 2 a.m. And I just thought, if I start down this road, I'm just not sleeping tonight. So I'm probably going to go back to it later today.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done it either, so we won't be touching on anything. If anybody does have the Criterion, don't worry, I'm not touching on any of the essays or the multiple in-depth things that they always do on these things. So we'll leave that to them. But fair enough. So, in that case, I'm going to move us to looking at the various sections that we normally do, beginning with the writing and the plot of this movie. It was written by H.M. Walker. He wrote the titles, the kind of the text things that come up. Also by Gene Havers, who was uncredited, and Harold Lloyd, who was uncredited. The story was credited to Hal Roach, Sam Taylor, and Tim Whelan. And other than that, all I have is just a little bunch of stuff about what happens in the film that I wanted to talk about. So, I mean, I'm not sure how you want to tackle the writing of this thing, because it is such a specific thing that really we could happily just go around and talk about our favorite bits and what we think works in the writing and what doesn't. We kind of already have talked about it in terms of, the retail shift and things like that. So, yeah, did you want to mention anything else before I kind of go through a little bit at a time?
No, as we said, you mentioned Hal Roach, who ended up who founded Hal Roach Studios, and I mean that guy has a legacy, Laurel and Hardy and Our Gang, Charlie Chase. His name is synonymous with these kind of things, and I think
as soon as you see that come up on the title screen, Harold Lloyd, Hal Roach Studios, you just think, all right, you're kind of in for a good time. So with regards to that, and I know he did work on the story and things like that. It's, but yeah, I mean, we've already touched upon it. I mean, it's weird how the more things change, the more they stay the same, and there's such a relevancy to a lot of this. And I mean, even when you're getting down to brass tacks, that it's a pursuit of money, as it were, because nobody has enough money, and the fact that let's do stupid things for money, and you see that these days in reality show kind of things. So
yeah,
it kind of never went away. Everybody still makes a fool of themselves, and in some cases risks life and limb just for kind of a paycheck. And from that perspective, I think it's done really well. I mean, I'll be honest, as much as I love the some of the retail things in here, it does slow down the action somewhat.
Yeah.
And I know it's very much of the time, and I know she's meant to be amazing, but I really didn't like Mildred.
Oh, right. Well, it's strange you say that, because I was going to say my biggest criticism of this is, and the part I think which does really horribly date it, is this idea that, he's got this love of his life, but he has to go hit the big city, try and make it big, make enough money to be able to be worthy of her, and then summon her to come and live, and, has to be able to afford to buy her nice things and stuff. And I'm just like, this is such a terribly dated attitude of just like, hang on, what's she doing? She just has to be this kind of kept woman,
and she's fine at the start, but then the whole section where she's in the office and he's pretty much trying to act like a boss just by acting like a git.
Which again is probably quite true of most bosses.
It is, but I don't like the fact that she sat there just saying, yeah, ring a bell and see who comes in, and that kind of thing. And you just think, these poor people, and she just waltzes in. She wants the money, and I think the thing that really kind of got to me about it is there's one point where he sees that, that his help is needed on the counter, and he goes to help out, and she sees him doing this, and she starts to physically grimace at the fact that he's doing a pleb's job. And so then he has to pretend that he's showing someone else the ropes kind of thing. And you just think, oh man, stay with the girl behind the counter. Mildred can go back home.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That kind of thing is, as much as I kind of appreciate the comedy that you get in a lot of, right the way from here to the 60s, the era of like, no, I don't just work here. I'm the big boss, and we got to fake it and pretend that I'm like, that's a kind of classic thing that you always get in that kind of, especially workplace type sitcoms and stuff. But like you said, it's the fact that he kind of felt like he had to be in order to be worthy of the woman that I was like, this is not great, Like, there's nothing wrong with the job you've got, and you're working your ass off, dude, in fairness,
Yeah, so. And, and if that's not good enough for her, I'm sorry. I know, like you say, attitudes are changing. Attitudes have changed since then. But it's still, I don't know, it still really rankles me. I don't know what.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. It is. It's the one thing that's dated horribly, and I think nowadays you would look at it, and there's a certain generation, a very young generation, that would look at it as like, well, why has he got to? What's going on? What's she doing for a job? Why has he got to go and make a fortune before he can, be worthy of letting her come and live with him and whatever else? It's bizarre. Although I did like that at the end, they kind of seem to have ignored that fact, and she's just like, "Oh, I'm just happy to be with you, whatever." You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
and they've kind of moved
Well, I mean,
on
they
to that.
do kind of, as you say, towards the end, they do kind of shy away from that plot line, because at that point, it's just like, okay, is he going to live?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, he was prepared to do a lot of things, bless him, for his bit of money. So,
He was. Nowadays, people would just get a YouTube channel.
They wouldn't be successful, believe us.
Yeah.
Tell you what, where's the nearest freaking building to climb? Jesus, if I could have saved the last 3 years of work and climbed a building for the pittance that we've already made out of this. Point me to the nearest skyscraper. But no, that's fair. So what was I gonna? It's actually, I kind of just written down things that I appreciate, because, like I said, this is the first time I've ever seen this. Before we go any further, actually, what I should probably have done, because I haven't done it yet, so I will ask you it now, because apologies for forgetting. Can you remember the very first time you saw this and what your initial impressions of it were?
Oh, good grief! Oh, it must have been shortly after I watched that Harold Lloyd show. So 6, 7. It must have been around that age. Oh, good grief! Yeah, I do remember for the longest time. I mean, I presume we'll get into it. I do remember for the longest time telling everybody, because I read it, or it had come up on maybe it came up on the Harold Lloyd show itself, that he was there physically hanging from this clock. I remember telling everybody that, completely unaware of the fact that obviously he had rigging beneath him and that kind of thing. So so it really was going up on the 9th, 10th floor kind of thing. But I still remember being incredibly impressed by it. And I think it was during that show that it did mention that he'd lost a couple of digits. So yeah, I don't know. I just always really kind of looked up to him, and I think it was around about that era that I finally saw the movie.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I have to say, by the way, I can understand why the kind of hanging from the clock thing has become the iconic image, but I do think it's a shame that it kind of has overshadowed like the rest of the movie, because it feels like it's all kind of building to that, and in a way that's like, if you look around the internet for this movie, it's all you see, as if it's the only thing. And it's like that's like a 2-minute sequence out of a well over an hour movie, and yeah, there's other things that happen here. Some of them are equally as kind of dangerous. I mean, as he's climbing up and he's falling over the ledge and things are kind of poking him out of the way and he's getting tangled in nets and things, I was like, okay, the clock stunt is fantastic, but there's some pretty equally like, pretty precarious moments in this climb as well,
Yeah, and I mean, it's in a film that you have. I mean, you do have a lot of visual gags. So when you do finally watch it, you're expecting it to be all the kind of, well, not necessarily all the clock face scene, but you're expecting it to be all that kind of thing. And I think the retail aspects would put some people off, and I think it does it a disservice, the fact that it has that iconic image, because if you do tune in and you start watching it and you're seeing all these retail things, you might be tempted to kind of turn it off, because you think this isn't what I signed up for. But if you've as we said, if you've worked in retail, it really is very true to life kind of thing. And I think you're missing out on a lot of humor. And and the thing I love about this film, there's a lot of good kind of slapstick visual gags in before you even get the ball rolling, like at the start, where he picks up the baby instead of the case, and then he gets on the cart and horse instead of the train, and that. I love all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, there's a few of those I've written down, because I think there is enough comedy that gets you interested at the start of the movie that you wouldn't necessarily turn it off. But I think, like you, I think it, even though it's only just over an hour, I think it does sag in the middle bit. It really overplays the the retail joke to a ridiculous level, as you said, when you start getting the imitating the boss, the trying to impress the woman kind of stuff, goes on just a little bit too long. And the thing that bugged me about it is that, like, I'm not sure how like silent films generally work because I haven't seen that many of them, but like thematically speaking, it doesn't really fit the title of the movie. Like, I expected it all to be like workplace accidents and stupid things that can happen. And other than the kind of last sort of, 10 minutes and the iconic imagery, that's not really what it's about.
No.
So, yeah. Do you get what I mean? Like, I thought it would just be a series of vignettes where it's all just like, here's stupid things and accidents that can happen.
It's just like Faces of Death, but the silent movie one. Yeah, it does. It is like two films in one, and I think you automatically believe that you're signing up for one when you look at the clock face, and it's such an iconic image that when you get things like the Criterion disc and stuff like that, it's the cover for it.
Yeah, I mean it's all fine when I'm looking for pictures for the thumbnail or just like. I tend to look at pictures like, yes, can I find some clips and some pictures from scenes that I could do for when I edit the thing together of the things we're going to be talking about and stuff. And like all you can find is the clock face scene. And I'm just like, there's so much more to the movie. But at the same time, it really does feel like the movie is just basically laying a whole lot of track for that last 10 minutes.
Yeah. And I don't think that's necessarily the fault of Lloyd or Roach or the director or anything like that. I think it's just because it worked so well, and since then, as you say, there's been 103 years kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's it works to the movie's own detriment in that everybody goes, oh wow, this is the movie that has that scene in it, but it's at the expense of everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I mean, I get it. It looks great, and it's an iconic image for a reason. Outside of itself, it looks incredible. It's a great stunt that you can appreciate, and yeah, okay. I mean, it's to the point where I think even Martin Scorsese riffs on it in Hugo at one point. One of the images I think on the posters of that, he's got somebody hanging from a clock.
That's actually Baron Cohen, I believe.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, I get it, but like I said, it just felt like watching the movie for the first time. It was a shame because it's the last thing you see, more or less. I mean, virtually the last thing you see, and there's so much build up to it that you're just like, so when are we going to get to this kind of clock thing? So it's a shame. I mean, I get it that even the way it's structured like that, you're going to put your last sort of biggest gag last. But it's a shame that, like you said, with the benefit of time and stuff, I'm not sure the people that made this wanted, the big gag of the film blown all over the front cover of everything, and that being the first thing you see before you even enter the film probably kind of dulls the impact a bit. It's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, great setups are everything.
Yeah,
but I think it does a disservice to the rest of the movie and the work that goes into the rest of the movie. But unfortunately, we live in an era, especially now, even though it's happened prior to this, that it's the big moments. It's the TikTok generation kind of thing that you instantly want the gratification if you see what I mean. And I think to a certain extent, anybody that promotes this movie or looks up this movie, they're going to want this iconic imagery. And there's so much more to this film than that. And I think it really does a disservice to it because, as you mentioned, with regards to the thumbnails, I was looking up a thumbnail for the Avatar, and I just thought, I'll have the clock face. Michael have the clock face because because that's what it is. Unfortunately, that's what this film comes down to. It's.
I see what you're saying, but I did try and vary it slightly because I knew you'd have the more iconic hanging from the kind of clock face obvious one, and I was like, I actually think I was slightly more taken aback and gasped when the entire face of the clock came off, which is why that's my kind of Avatar here. I was like, it surprises me that this hasn't become the image, it's him hanging from the hand of the clock or hanging from the clock there, like in your image. But I was like, mine was the entire face is coming off for crying out loud. It's kind of like, oh shoot.
Yeah.
But this one, you really are dangling for your life.
Trying to climb off of the clock face after it's come open, and he keeps getting pulled back by the spring that's attached to
Oh,
his
I love
trousers.
that. And he just kind of lands and sits in the kind of the mechanisms of the clock, just defeated. Yeah. That's so cool. That's what I mean. There's more to it than just kind of, I'm hanging from a, the second hand or whatever it is, So, but, anyway, I mean, that's obviously the moment that sells it, though. So I get it. But yeah. So I want to go through some things. I only have like about a dozen moments that I made a point of that I would have mentioned. And again, if you haven't seen the movie, watch it before I go through this, because I'm probably going to spoil a lot of really potentially great jokes as somebody who's seeing this for the first time. And I kind of want to make a note of it.
I think it's officially safe to say the moratorium on spoilers for this one is over.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, but I wouldn't want to spoil. Like I said, I'd rather if people are going to watch it for the first time, do what I did and go in and experience it. Don't like have all the jokes explained to you by a podcast and then watch it. It's
you sound as if people are listening to this, man.
Well, I mean, yeah, I could potentially ruin the film for all of 6 people, but never mind. So the first thing I want to mention, because I think it's a joke that doesn't necessarily translate, and I'm not sure if it's time or culturally or what, but I looked it up and realized that's what they were getting at. And it's the very first joke in the film when it looks like Harold Lloyd, or the boy, as he's called, is in jail because he's behind bars, and you see what looks like a hangman's noose. And then the camera just pans out and reveals that he's in a train station and the bars are a gate. And the hangman's noose is like this thing they used to have in train stations, like the cord they would pull or whatever. And I was like, I did not get that was the joke until I read about it. And I was like, oh, the gag is that you just start the film and be like, oh my God, this man's about to get hung. And then, it's a train station. Okay, all right. I mean, I probably would have thought it was great at the time.
In fairness, if you ever caught a train from Bristol Temple Meads, they are pretty much the same thing.
And I like that it was a mislead and the appropriate music when it reveals it and it gives it the old like
Yeah.
I always love that kind of thing. In terms of the actual, like I said, there's so many great jokes on the sort of cards, I forget do you call them title cards or dialogue cards, whatever, that come up. I haven't copied them all because in the end I was just like, these are all great jokes. Whoever wrote the kind of titles is doing a blinder. But the first one I wrote down was, the boy has now got an apartment that he's sharing with somebody. They're both pretty poor. They have one pocketbook between them, usually empty. Yep, that sums it up pretty well, doesn't it? And
it is like this podcast.
We do not have the skill to do the next thing I loved, though, which is, again, I think this is what would keep people watching the film, is the bit of slapstick nonsense where they're disguising themselves as coats because the landlord or the landlady's coming in to get their rent money. And so they're inside the coach, but also right up, hanging off the wall and kind of, I don't know how they do it, but it looks incredible. And it must have been a physical effort to do, but it just looks so cool.
Yeah.
And not only do they do it once, but then Harold Lloyd basically fakes that the landlord's coming back. I love that. And so his mate jumps back to himself. Just to amuse himself. Yeah. You've got to love stuff like that. And I won't go too much into the next one, but the idea that letters are received every day, that's my favorite line. So I'll talk about it at the end. So I won't go into it fully. Yeah. As he's going to work, they mention how you're always here so early. One day you're going to end up being president or night watchman.
Or night watchman, yeah.
And then I've already mentioned it, but yeah, just because, sorry to spoil it, but the stunt of again, we see it a lot these days, but this is probably one of the first examples as he's kind of hanging between the two cars, one leg on each, and then you're doing that knockabout bit of almost Keystone Cops business, and he runs from the incredibly crowded tram he's trying to get on, and then he gets a lift off some guy, but then he ends up getting a ticket, and so he just gives the guy the ticket and walks away and goes off. And it's kind of, I do like that kind of slapstick stuff. I appreciated it. There's a very rapid joke right at the start that I think kind of, as I said, tails off a little bit as you get to the retail stuff where the pace slows a bit. So I thought, I kind of expected that it was all going to be sort of scattershot like the start, but it kind of isn't. So
yeah, I think those first 10, 20 minutes, you kind of get a feel for where it's going, and then it kind of wrong foots you with regards to the retail. I could honestly have done a little less of the retail, as you mentioned earlier. It does drag it down a little.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but anyway, so as we get into the retail stuff, though, as I said, the last customer being really annoying when you want to go home and everyone's waiting for you. And then at the very end, the punchline of that being that you liked the first one that you saw the best anyway. I was like, oh yes. Oh yeah, relatable, and you just want to scream. And then the fact that like she goes to come back, and he's just like, nope, not having it. I'm hiding.
It just hides.
Incredibly relatable for over a century. You know what I mean? I've lived that. I can tell you that much. And then, as I said, a lot of the kind of shop stuff kind of comes and goes. It's the stuff about him and his nemesis. I can take it or leave it. It's not a huge deal for me, I don't know if there's anything that you like in this sequence that you wanted to shout out, or
I do like this is the problem I have with this movie, and we have mentioned it simply because it's their kind of thing. But if you kind of knew that it was going to be a retail thing, I think that would have come over better for me. If it was a movie entirely about working in the store.
Yeah.
Rather than, again, you're going back to the imagery of the clock and stuff like that. I think if you'd have expected it and it was a movie just about working in the store, I think that would have made it work a heck of a lot better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if it had been a title, something like Retail Woes or something,
Yeah.
Again, they're not gonna lead with the kind of death-defying stunt in that case, are they? So yeah.
No, and I think that's it's a problem in that it does drag it down. I mean, there are some good jokes in there. I think it just it just doesn't hold your interest for as long, because by that point you've had the jokes at the beginning, you've had the little gags, and with the best will in the world, you are at that point then looking forward to the clock. You're looking forward to the hanging off the side of the building thing, and I think that's what kind of lowers it down a little.
Yeah. Fair enough. I do have to mention that this is such an old, played-out joke, but it still did make me laugh when he's cutting the bit of material, and I think it's his nemesis that's there, and he walks away, and you realise he's cut out a bit of his jacket from the back.
Yeah,
he's put a big hole in it. I was like, it's so obvious, but it's still kind of funny even today.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. And the other thing I noticed, which isn't so much that I found it funny, but I was fascinated by, was when he's kind of realising that, oh, the money that he's making, he's going to have to put towards getting stuff for the, his woman or whatever else. And so he literally tightens his belt a little bit as if to show that, oh, I can't afford to eat or whatever else. And I was like, is this literally the origin of the phrase, we're going to have to tighten our belts? I do wonder, because, I mean, it's 1923, so maybe it is. And that's where the idea kind of came into cultural consciousness kind of thing,
It's possible. I mean, what I will say is that there are certain bits in this that I think are really well directed. The director, Fred C. Newmeyer. I think you've already mentioned one. The one at the start where you think he's about to be hung, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It again, as I said, it wrong foots you. The other couple of notable things that really stand out for me, one of them is with regards to the money situation, how he's wanting to eat and he's looking at that tray of food.
That's the one. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
He's trying to hold, the money out, but every time he buys something, one less thing disappears off of that tray.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And he's imagining his food, but then eventually more and more it disappears down to like nothing. And that's when he's like, well, I'll tighten my belt. I can't afford even to eat. You know what I mean? So,
I will say, not that keen on the certain racial stereotype in that scene.
Oh, I didn't notice it, but maybe that's just me.
Less said about that, the better.
Okay.
And I also love the direction from the viewpoint where he just turns into a cheeky bastard basically and steals an ambulance. And he's lying on the stretcher and he's
when he's faking he sees the guy and then he lies down next to it like, oh, okay, I can get a lift here.
yeah
Yeah, that I did appreciate the kind of gag factor of that and the amusing thing of it. Yeah, that's fair enough. And then weirdly enough, I don't know how you achieved this or you perfected time travel, but you appear in the movie at this point, the very drunk man. So...
Thank you. I was like, what? What's he talking about? Yes.
I could not help myself. I was watching that. I was like, now I know why DK enjoys this movie. He finds it incredibly relatable.
It's a biopic.
Story of your life. But I do love, and it's such a small thing, but it has to be mentioned. I love that when the dialogue card appears for the drunk man, it's spelled like drunk, like pronunciations.
Yeah.
Oh, that is brilliant. That's so good. And his whole thing, I mean, the fact that he tries to lose the cop Harold Lloyd in that scene by going through the door, and the cop just goes out the open door on the side that he hasn't seen. I am such a sucker for. Again, it's such an obvious joke, but it's so funny.
And the thing is, I love how they don't play it as a shock. It's not, because when that happens, you half expect the cop to come out, then be face to face. Harold
and him be like,
and run off. But I just love the fact that he just walks off. The cop's following him, and the shot is of his face slowly realizing that he's behind him.
I was going to say that's so well directed because it actually it shows you the two shadows kind of converging first.
Yeah.
And then I was just, that's brilliant, because you don't need to, as I say, it could have been played for a broad sort of like the cop comes out and then Howard Lloyd jumps and puts his hands to his face. Oh, shock horror. But it doesn't. It plays it really slowly and like, uh-oh.
Yeah. I think it does that kind of thing really well. Really well.
Yeah.
And the other thing I've it's so stupid, and but basically I love the end scene. Everything's done. Everything's, he's back with Mildred. They're at the top of the building. Everything's fine. And then he cuts to his flatmate, who's still on the run. And at this point, he's like hundreds of meters away. And he's just like, I'm just going to get rid of this cop.
Yeah, just keep going. But it's the fact that the little the dialogue card has his writing tiny because he's so far away as well.
I love that.
As if you can picture it being like barely audible, like, just keep climbing. I'll get you. Brilliant. I only have a couple of more things that I wanted to bring up. First of all, I did groan at the kick me thing because it's so played out in our lives and stuff, and I was like, oh, really, kick me? But then it got me, and I did laugh when it basically backfired on him. He ended up with it himself because he hadn't realized that he leans against it, and then the drunk guy starts kicking him. Like, oh, nice. And
I do like the sound effect that they use every time somebody kicks him, and you've got that bass drum going boom.
Boom. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, precisely. It's perfect. And the other thing was, it's very Only Fools and Horses, but the way he does the kind of leaning on what he thinks is there, and then he goes through it and lands on the floor, but then just tries to kind of style it out as a bit of exercise. Like he's just dropped to the floor to do push-ups.
That's done. I think that's done really well, and I think that's a testament to Lloyd's kind of physical comedy chops. He doesn't even miss a beat on that. It just
it's straight away. Yeah. That's like, that's great. That's excellent. I mean, you could have just played that for the I've fallen stupidity, but the fact that he falls gives you one like half laugh, and then the fact he immediately breaks into like, I'm just doing push-ups. It's like, oh, come on, that's brilliant. Yeah. So I liked all that. So anything else you wanted to mention about the writing before I move on?
Oh, crikey, are we still on the writing? We've kind of gone all over the place here.
Well, I mean, I've got bits and pieces, but we've kind of talked a little bit about the.
No, I just think it's, as I say, apart from that little lull, I just think it just moves at a decent pace.
Yeah. I would say the same. I think it's perhaps, even though it is very short movie wise, I think it is a little bit longer than it needs to be. And like I said, the middle section sags a little bit, but I don't want to get too bogged down with that. So talking about the directing, you've already mentioned it's directed by Fred C. Newmeyer and Sam Taylor, apparently. What can you say? I've written bits and pieces about the directing, but before I do, is there anything that stood out to you that you made a note of? Or
I think I've already mentioned it. Like I said, it's the those little touches, like when he's peeking out of the ambulance, and
yes, I literally have that down. The fact that the ambulance point of view is through the window, as if you're looking at it. Yeah.
It's I just think it works really well.
Yeah. I mean, it's common on all silent movies, but it's worth bringing up since it's the first one we're reviewing. The fact that whenever you get a close up, it does that kind of silent movie thing of blacking out everything but a central circle, so that you get the impression of zooming in, or like I don't know if it's supposed to mimic the vision of an eye or something, but I do know it happens in every silent movie. So
yeah, it's
not
like
just this one.
they pull the focus on. Yeah,
Yeah.
I also when it's little touches like the fact where the cop's looking at the newspaper and it shows the blank head, and all of a sudden the cop
They must have run out of ink.
Yeah.
Oh man, such a good guy. Yeah, I love it. And what else did I say? Obviously, you got the classic cop chasing him. I've already mentioned the kind of two shadows thing. I did think the kind of tangled up in the sports net bit was a bit too much, especially when you start, you cut to the drunk guy and he's tangled up in it, and it's all getting a bit stupid for me at that moment. I was like, okay, you've overplayed this card a little bit, I think. I've written down old wig joke, which I can't even remember, but I must have either liked or disliked that at some point. So.
There's the only bit that I can think of is where he's combing his hair in the reflection in the bald guy's head.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, maybe. Anyway, and other than that, I kind of, again, it's cliche, but obviously it ends in the very romantic kind of zoom in, walking off into the sunset kind of way. So worth mentioning, I suppose, if you like that kind of thing. So any notes on the directing other than what we've mentioned?
No, like I said, I just think it's done really well. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of things such as the split between the trolley and the car that is used so much since then. I mean, it was Christ. I watched Crystal Skull the other night, and they're using it in that.
Yeah, I'm gonna move to the acting then, because there's not a lot of people, so I can kind of just run through them all. Then we can talk about what we haven't already said. So obviously you've got Harold Lloyd playing the boy, Mildred Davis as the girl, Bill Struther as Bill Limpy Bill, the pal, Noah Young as the Law, Westcott Clark as Mr. Stubbs, the floor walker, Earl Mohan as DK, the drunk, Mickey Daniels as the newsboy, and Anna Townsend as the grandma. So what does anybody particularly stand out, and anybody that you wanted to shout out, or anybody you didn't feel impressed by from that list of actors?
Again, Mildred, but I think that's it's not the actress's fault. It's just the writing and the generational failure of that comedy. As you said, it's such an old thing now, and attitudes have changed. But I wasn't expecting to really dislike it because of it, and it's not entirely fair on the actress, but. Yeah,
that's a shame. I mean, I didn't dislike her. I disliked the kind of idea of it and the plot concept of it, but I didn't have any real beef with the girl herself, as it were. Until, as you said,
when like I said, when it got to that point where she's saying, "Oh, ring a bell," and that kind of thing, and it's almost like she's actively getting off on watching him treat other people like crap, and I think that's the problem I had with it.
Yeah, I think I haven't mentioned it, but the other thing that kind of bugs me is that she's very willing to kind of imitate having fainted, which it benefits him, but I'm kind of like, why would she go along with this? It just seems very kind of plot convenience. Like at that point, wouldn't she be like, why am I doing this? What have you got to hide, kind of thing? But, the one joke I did love in that whole sequence, though, is when she makes him ring the bells for everybody to appear, and everyone does, and then he just dives back into his own place as if he's come, along with everyone else. He's looking around like, who did that? What's going on?
and like everybody looks at him, and he's just like, I don't know.
Yeah, who rang that? So yeah, I love all that. But, anything else? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Anything else about the acting?
No, the only other thing that. And it's not down to the the actress's ability. It's just the look. And I don't know how familiar you are with BBC sitcoms, but when the old woman turns up saying, "Oh, son, you're going to get hurt if you do that," all I could think about was Grandmama from Allo Allo. I expected it to go, "Oh, Renee," and start bashing the chamber pot on the ground or something.
Do not climb that building; you will fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you say. I mean, they're all kind of cliches, but they are for a reason. They would have originated in silent comedy before we get to the sitcoms of our era, which, you know, plays with these tropes and stuff. So yeah, naturally you've got the kind of old grandma of like, oh, don't do it, it's too dangerous kind of character. That's literally her entire role in the movie, is to point out how scary this is, you know. And the newsboy has nothing to do except stand there and go like, extra, read the story, that's exposition, you know. So he's not got much to do there. I will give credit to Earl Mohan, because drunk acting is not easy. It's even less easy when you can't even talk. You're just doing it physically, and he nails it. I mean, you know, you probably have more experience with being drunk than I do, but I found it very convincing.
I don't know what you're talking about, mate. I'm a picture of sobriety. Yeah, everybody thinks it's really easy to act drunk, and you can tell from a certain, you know, you can tell certain actors have it down pat, and I think he gives really well with that.
Yeah, it's the fact that he kind of has that sort of almost, it's given him the kind of schoolboy cheekiness because he's drunk, so that when he's going around kicking everybody or, you know, doing daft stuff with the cop, he's just clearly enjoying it and snickering and not caring about, you know, what's happening to him, which is why I didn't like the kind of being tangled in the net thing, because I was like, oh, it's kind of, it ruins all of his gags up to that point where he just didn't give a crap, because now he's like, oh, I'm stuck. You know? But yeah, I have to say Westcott Clark as Mr. Stubbs. Like I say, I wasn't really impressed by that character, but I suppose he's doing what he's supposed to be in terms of, you meant to look at him like I guess Walter the softy from the Beano kind of, oh, it's the bad guy character.
Yeah.
All right.
I do like the bit as well where his colleague brings up the little notebook where someone's obviously drawn a picture of Stubbs. It's a caricature.
Oh, yeah.
And he doesn't know what to do because Mildred's there, so he just writes okay as if he's doing something official.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't get that joke, but it was so weird and surreal. I was like, he just went okay and handed it back. What? All right. Yeah, okay.
I do like the fact, going back to the acting, I will like the fact that it's a silent movie. However, Lloyd conveys that kind of, he switches from his normal character, the boy, to this boss figure with this uppity attitude. And you don't need, you don't need sound at that point, because you can see just from his mannerisms. I think he does that very well.
I have written that down. I said throughout, like, obviously Harold Lloyd, because it's a silent film, he has to be, but he's very physical. So even when he's like hiding in the box, how flexible you have to be to do that kind of thing, or the fact that, like, it's not specific to him, but I think he's the master of it. Like you said, the exaggerated gestures, so that even without sound, you can see that he's changing his persona when he's imitating the boss, or you really get the sense of how exasperated he is with this last customer, or when he's having a busy day at work. I think it portrays all that perfectly, or, you know, nerves around the cop that he's trying to lose or whatever. So I think he's really good at those. And or even like, I'm not sure if it's him that did this stunt or what was involved, but I was so impressed with like the antics when the birds are like flying at him out the open window, and I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah,
that's how did you do that? Because you can't really control what the birds are doing, and they're obviously not like CGI or, you know, animatronic or whatever. These are just birds. They're gonna do what they're gonna do. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that one seems to get stuck on him, and he gets rid, and he just does not want to go.
Yeah, exactly. You know, just like impressive stuff. So yeah, I mean, him. Like I said, I didn't really have a problem with Mildred Davis, but she doesn't have a lot to do besides be the kind of, you know, typical 20s kept woman, I suppose.
Yeah.
Bill Struther as Limpy Bill, I think he was really good, actually. I think he sold his personality quite well, with the whole kind of climbing thing and that being the crux of everything. I like that. As you said, he kind of gets the last gag.
He's incredibly endearing as well.
That's the thing I was going to say. He's a bit of a lad, you know, a bit of a. You can kind of get the sense he's a bit of a wheeler dealer type, and always gets out of trouble by the scuff of his neck kind of thing. But the fact that he gets that last gag and it's so funny is like, I'm still running away, but just keep going. I think it's really good. So and obviously Noah Young playing the cop, he's doing exactly what he's required to do, you know. So he's always going to have to be the straight man in the scenes, but he's so good at that. So yeah. Shall we move to the VFX production design then?
Yeah.
I don't have much, but I have little bits. I mean, we've talked about what we probably think, but I wanted to add this. The giant clock scene was filmed on the roof of Broadway leasehold building, as was the final shot of the film. A number of buildings from 1st Street to 9th Street in downtown Los Angeles, all of different heights, were used, with sets built on their roofs to match the facade of the main building, the International Bank building, at Temple and Spring Streets. In this way, the illusion of Lloyd climbing higher and higher up the side of one building was created, although the streetscapes seen beyond the sets are notably different at different stages of the climb. Whoops.
Yeah.
I didn't notice, but yeah, I mean, I did.
I don't know if it's because I've like seen it a few times, so I was paying much more attention this time. But yeah, the cityscape changes, and it's just like, oh, he's on a different building now.
Okay. I don't know how I didn't notice, but again, this is the first time I've seen that. I probably will notice it now next time.
Oh, yeah. I guarantee, mate, you'll not be able to not see it the next time you watch it. in that first one, there's like a couple of signs, one for, I believe, a department store, weirdly enough, and another for Stag something, because I thought, Stag, it just reminded me of Stag Chili from being...
I was just going to say that.
Completely basic, but I thought, Stag, has it been going that long? And
not sponsored.
Yeah, and then a couple of scenes later, they'd both gone completely wrong, and I was completely gone, and I was just like, oh, we're somewhere else now. And then it happens also later on as well.
I think I was too invested in the climb and like what was going to happen as you get to each floor. It just seems like there's a new inconvenience or a daft thing going on, you know.
I think I think it's that kind of movie magic kind of thing where it's almost sleight of hand, because you're supposed to be concentrating on Harold and what's going on in the foreground. You're not necessarily supposed to know what's happening in the background. And I think because I've seen it a few times now, my eyes were like kind of drifting to elsewhere. So I think that maybe that's why I was catching it this time where I hadn't before.
A potentially interesting question has occurred to me then. So with that in mind, would you be up for, as it were, and somebody going in and kind of digitally correcting so that background matches, or would you be kind of really averse to changing that?
No, I think even though, you know, it's kind of there, and it is noticeable, I think changing it would kind of ruin the vibe, the atmosphere.
Yeah.
If there is a case to be made for removing things or adding things, and George Lucas, there is never a case to be made for adding or removing things. Fair enough, but I don't. Even though it's noticeable, I don't think it takes away. For me, it didn't take any enjoyment from the actual movie. So, oh God, no! Please, just
no. I wouldn't say this. I mean, I asked the question because I was intrigued, but I would personally say no, because then it's not the same product as of its, you know, that was made at the time, and it changes. It changes it, you know. So even though it is narratively, you could argue, oh, it's taking you out of the narrative. I don't think it necessarily does all that badly, and it's more about the art staying the same as it was, isn't it? So,
exactly. And if you're going to have a problem with a narrative on, you know, a silent era slapstick movie, there are, you know, there are bigger things to worry about, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are several of them that I know do things that are, you know, physically impossible, that they just play for the laughs. So you can't get too hung up on these things. But,
exactly.
Not this film, mind you. I will say that nothing in here is that ridiculous that you can't imagine it. Although, like I said, some of the flexibility of Harold Lloyd is impressive, to say the least. I'm not doubting he did it, but he's fitter than I am, being able to curl into a box or hang himself up like a coat or whatever he's doing. So
you speak to someone that, you know, has trouble getting out of bed in the morning when he's slept wrong. So
yeah, exactly, same. So anything else that you can think of about the VFX or the production design that we haven't touched on?
I just love the fact that it's still. I just love the fact that back then you didn't even have to worry about CG. So when you do see Bill climbing the wall, you know, maybe there's some rigging there, but it's all achieved by human ingenuity, kind of thing. It's not a cheat, it's not a dodge, it's not, oh yeah, there were wires there, but someone CG'd him out afterwards, that kind of thing. I love, and I think this is why I like films from this era. As I say, you know, health and safety would have a conniption.
Yeah.
But there's an ingenuity, there's a daring to filmmaking that you just don't get these days. And for all the action sequences that you have in modern films and in modern comedies, I just don't think it holds up to stuff like this, because what you see on screen is what they were actually doing.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, you can see that, you know, Limpy Bill, as it were, is definitely doing his climbing on that scene, because there's no cut or anything. And they could have cheated it, as you said, even at the time. They could have done that kind of Spider-Man trick of filming him crawling on the floor and then just tilting the image up, you know, when it comes to editing the film. But they clearly didn't even do that. It's just literally him climbing the building, because he's good at it, and, you know, he can do it. So it was very impressive. And I mean, later on, you get the sense, as you said, when you're watching Harold Lloyd, that, you know, there are cuts obviously there, and you're not necessarily watching all one thing, although you never get the sense that he's not high up or in danger, you know. So but in terms of seeing Bill just literally scale the building, I was like, wow. And he's just doing it.
It's reminding me actually of another thing that makes me laugh about this film, where when it first happens and Bill's climbing the side of the building with the cop after him, and Harold stood next to this person with the flowers, and he's just ripping the shit out of these flowers.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Until the guy ends up with nothing left.
Yeah.
Harold's nervously just ripping flowers apart.
Yeah. I think it's things like that, to me, that make these films funnier than the big moments, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, yeah, I laughed a lot more. Criminal to say, but I laughed a lot more at some of the stuff that was a lot more subtle than the kind of clock hanging and stuff. I mean, I went away like, I thought that coke trick was probably the best thing in the film, the most hilarious thing, and it's a lot less complicated and probably a lot less dangerous than hanging from a clock, you know.
And I think that's also a tendency that is a problem with regards to using the clock image to such an extent. You have your expectations built up.
Yeah.
So that, you know, so when stuff does happen or doesn't happen, you kind of come away thinking, you know, I was expecting a little more from that.
I was going to say, I think I know what you mean, because the film doesn't really even make a big deal out of it. Like you'd expect, because it is so iconic and so, you know, prevalent when you look up the film, that when that scene comes, the film would stop and pause and take a minute and really zoom in and be like, really emphasize it. But it just kind of happens.
Yeah.
You know?
And then,
okay.
you know, they just move on, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you almost, from the way it's been promoted, you almost think that as we said earlier, that the entire thing is about workplace accident. It's about, you know, maybe he's some kind of demented window cleaner or something like that. And no, it gets that beat out of the way and moves on. And I think, you know, after 100 years of promotional material and discussing the movie, I think it's got to a point where it's a little overplayed, and I don't think that's, you know, anybody in production of the movie's fault. I think that's just general audiences as time's gone on.
Yeah, fair enough. So the music and sound then I wanted to talk about next. I don't have much to say. I have to say just that the music has a lot to do, and I appreciated that, because it is a full score, because it's a silent film. So therefore it has to set the tone of every scene and keep it consistent, and I appreciated it for doing that. But other than that, I can't really say much else, because I'm not really into, you know, I don't really know the specifics about music. I'm not heavily into it. I just knew that it was doing a great job of, like I said, tonally matching everything, and the fact that it has to be the entire way through. There's no moment of silence because it's a silent movie, so the whole thing has to have a score on it. I really appreciated that for what it was. So is there anything that you can mention about the music or whatever, or the sound?
You know, and I think when it comes to a silent film, especially, I think the fact that it's not too distracting, I think, you know, and allows the humor to shine on its own and the story to shine on its own. I think it does a good job. And unfortunately, I don't know if you've got it in your notes. I can't find the composer. But
oh no, I didn't even look, to be honest. But,
yeah, I've looked, but I honestly can't find it. But yeah, I think the composer did a good job.
You know, it creates the tension where it's needed. It creates the humor where it's needed, but it never overshadows the actual production. So, yeah, I think
You
it's
said it.
I think it's really good. And like I said, you know, the occasional sound effects that, I mean,
Yeah.
for me in a silent film aren't that ubiquitous anyway. So when they do show up, they are more noticeable. So as I say, you know, in the kick me gag, the fact that the bass drum's used every time that someone kicks another person, I think it works. It puts the emphasis on that, and I think it makes those scenes all the more funny.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, you said it all, really. So, so is there anything else that you wanted to mention before we get into our favorite stuff and conclusions and audience response, etc.?
No, I think we've pretty much covered everything, mate.
Awesome. I'll tell you what, next then we'll do, because I have it next year, and I'm not sure if we ever do it. I never know whether I'm used to doing this before or after the kind of critics response, but I'm just going to do it because it happens to be here. Favorite character, moment, and line of the movie that I always do in my episodes. So, did you want to start us off with that?
Favorite character? I mean, it's kind of gotta be it's gotta be Harold as the boy. He just finds himself in, like, you know, these increasingly intolerable situations, and all he's wanting to do is just, you know, earn a living. Poor guy, and impress his girlfriend. And you know, we've all been there. We've all been in these situations which rapidly get out of hand. I mean, I've never once got to a point where I've had to climb the side of a building, but you know, the night is young. So yeah, it's definitely Harold.
I can imagine you being the kind of person that would end up in that situation, to be honest.
The sad thing is, so can I. Yeah.
See, I just wouldn't do it. As soon as the second time he's like, keep going one more floor, I'd be like, nope.
Yeah,
I'm going no further.
I'll probably be in for that, because that's the kind of mug I am.
Oh man.
So yeah, Harold. Favorite scene. I can't say the clock face. I want to say the clock face.
You can if you want to. I'm not stopping you.
I like the climbing, don't get me wrong. But I like... See, I like the scene where he's trying to get on the trolley to go to work, and it's that packed. Yeah. So it's just a small thing. So he goes and gets on the other trolley, and then it starts off in the opposite direction. So he's like, oh, gosh. So, you know, he jumps off and runs back to the... I will say, just for this favorite moment, it's not a favorite scene, but this time it's what made me really laugh. It's what I mentioned earlier, where someone comes to relieve him. He wishes them good luck, goes away because he's looking disheveled, and this poor guy that he's left in his stead, who's, you know, really smartly dressed, and he just gets pulled to pieces by the customers.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you have a line? I mean, it's inside the movie, so yeah.
I know it's difficult. I'm just going to have to go with because it's such like a joke that continues. I just love the final scene where Bill's saying, you know, I've just got to ditch this cop.
Just keep going. Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, cool. Well, I'll give you my stuff then. My favorite character, I have actually written down here. DK will probably say the drunk dude, but you didn't, so it's fine. So that's the last time I'm going to dig that particular spear into your side, I promise. But yeah, obviously it's the boy. Everything is focused on and around him, as was common for the kind of time and for the genre. It was always, you know, showcasing the lead actor, as it were. So it makes sense. Favorite moment, I see the whole thing does build to that iconic clock hanging moment. So I have picked that because when it comes, it is as heart in your mouth as you'd expect, though I'm not sure it's necessarily funny. Yeah. And that's my favorite line. I kind of spoiled it a little bit up top, but it is, there were certain days of the week when she could be sure of a letter from him. They were Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I don't know why that makes me laugh. Again, it's such an obvious dumb joke, but I really did laugh at that. Like little intertitle card when it came up, I was like, okay, all right. So, yeah. So yeah, with that done, then we will come back and give our final thoughts and our scores, etc. But as I often do, or as I always do, I should say, on the Cinema Classics, I do have a critics response. We don't tend to do audience response because, as I said multiple times now, it kind of seems redundant when it comes to a classic film because hopefully you'd assume it would be well regarded. So yeah, in terms of the critics' response to this, there's not a whole amount that I could find because it tends to be like people have written whole essays, and I didn't really want to start, reading those verbatim. But what I do have is as thus. The New York Times gave Safety Last a very positive review. A contemporary review in Photoplay predicted the film's future by saying, "This new Harold Lloyd farce will become a classic of its kind, or we will miss our guess, for it is the bespectacled comedian's best effort to date." The reviewer concluded, "This is easily one of the big comedies of the year. It is 7 reels in length, but it speeds by with the rapidity of a corking 2-reeler." Wow. Talk about dating. I don't even understand what that means. Okay. The American Film Institute nominated the film for both their 1998 and 2007 lists of AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies. It was also nominated for AFI's 100 Years, 100 Laughs. It placed number 97 on AFI's 100 Years, 100 Thrills. Rotten Tomatoes gives the film a rating of 97% from 70 reviews, with the consensus persuasive enough to give audiences acrophobia when they aren't laughing at Harold Lloyd's antics. Safety Last is a marvel of visual effects and slapstick comedy. And pour yourself one out and get ready for your drinks, people, because in 1994, Safety Last was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. And I'm sure more than one audience member was mouthing those words along with me at this point, because, literally all but one of the Cinema Classics has had that exact quote, we say. So you can't be too disappointed if it's at least been recognized. It took till 1994, which is a bit shocking, but it's in there anyway.
Yes,
so you got to be happy.
A bit to get around to it sometimes, doesn't it?
It does, really. Yeah, it's from 1923, but So then that's what the audience was, or at least the critics thought. So now we have to give our conclusions and our scores out of 5 stars. And DK, would you like to start, or would you like me to start?
I'll go first because I never usually have much to say, and I know you have your essays. So I think it holds up remarkably well. It's there were certain points where, because I've not seen it in a while, I was expecting the humor to go to a very different place than it did, and I'm really glad it did. Because for the most part, it felt to me like Lloyd never punched down, as it were. And I'm glad that this time, a certain scene notwithstanding, it didn't do that, and instead concentrated on what it needed to, which is the humor, the slapstick, and Lloyd's how can you put it, boyish charm. And I think it works really well. It's got good effects, even though obviously some are noticeable these days. But it holds up, and the amount of effort that must have gone into them, the physical exertion, I cannot fault them for that whatsoever. Is it funny? Yes. Is it funny where you expect it to be? Not necessarily. I think the reception over the years has kind of spoilt what did make this film brilliant. That's not to say that it isn't brilliant, but I think people are expecting the wrong thing from it going in, and I think that's down to its reputation over the years. Is it a good film? Oh, you bet your ass it's a good film. I could happily watch this again and again. And for a movie that's over 100 years old to still, to me, be as funny, if not funnier, than modern day comedies, it's special indeed. So because of that, I'm going to give it 4 stars. I know you're expecting me to give it 5 simply because I picked it and things like that. There are things. I think it's mostly down to the little lull when it gets to the retail bit. Not necessarily Lloyd behind the counter, but the whole pretending to be the boss kind of thing. I think that joke goes on a little too long, maybe. But
agreed.
I think it works. It works really well. So it's a 4-star for me.
Okay, cool. Well, as you said, I've prepared my essay, so here are my thoughts on the film. This is my first real exposure to classic silent cinema comedy, and I can definitely see the appeal and the reason for its popularity. but with caveats. It probably sounds a bit daft to criticize a 103-year-old film for this, but it does reflect some uncomfortably dated attitudes. A man must become a rich success in order to be worthy of and to keep a woman. At one point, the lead character dresses in drag for cheap laughs, though this is less egregious as it sounds because he's imitating a mannequin. There's a crass joke on women's sizes as well that left something of a bad taste. Whilst I'm being critical, I would also add that surprisingly, at barely over an hour, the film somewhat overstays its welcome, as DK said. The overall pacing and gag ratio is rapid, but some bits go on too long or get just a bit too ludicrous for me after a while. The film also barely ties into its title theme until the very end, and the tighter thematic focus there, I think, might have helped the piece flow better. All of that said, there are multiple great gags here that did get me to chuckle, even after all this time. I also have to admire the craft on display, comedic timing, physicality, staging, and of course, those thrillingly breathtaking stunts. The direction and caption writing are also to be applauded, and that key image is iconic for a reason. Overall, this is a film that I feel ranks in the very good, but not excellent category. I appreciate the skill and effort that went into it a little more than I emotionally connect with it, and I'm unsure if it's necessarily the greatest example of its broad genre, though it does make me want to actually watch more. It's undeniably fun, visually engaging, impressive, but ultimately just shows its age and sags in places. And I give it 3.5 out of 5, actually. So not a million miles away from me. And yeah, I mean, I would point out, by the way, that's a good score. That's a very solid good, because I think a lot of people regard, anything that's not a 4, 4.5, or a 5 as being bad. 3.5 out of 5 is still 7 out of 10. It's a solid, very good movie. So I don't think that's me criticizing it or calling it bad by any means. It's just, like I said, those little caveats and those issues that I had with it. So, yeah, so putting those scores together, dividing by the two of us here, gives you a final score for Safety Last of 3.75 out of 5. So maybe a tiny bit low, but
no, I think that's fair, mate.
Yeah,
you did bring up an interesting question though with what you said. Would you be tempted to watch more Harold Lloyd in the future?
Oh yeah, I mean, not just Harold Lloyd, but just silent film in general. I mean, like I said, now that I've always kind of wanted to, but I've never took the plunge. And when you suggested it, I was like, cool, I can start doing that. And yeah, I mean, I have nothing against the genre in particular, but I just get the sense that this probably isn't the one that I would necessarily find funniest, if that makes sense, even watching it.
That's perfectly fine, mate.
Yeah.
So, like me, did you? Have you never? Have you never been a huge watcher of Chaplin and things like that?
Not really. I mean, like you said, I've probably seen the odd thing where I haven't seen a full movie, but I've seen clips of them, probably from things that were packaging clips as if it was a thing for TV back in the day. Because again, I'm vaguely the same generation as you, maybe slightly younger. But yeah, so we had to have shows where it was just like the best of silent comedy, and it would just show, like I said, a series of the clips rather than showing the whole movie. So I've seen bits, like I said, like the Marx Brothers mirroring bit or the Chaplin potatoes bit or things like that. And I haven't seen the movie, so I know that must have been from a clip show type situation, but I've never sat and watched full silent movies.
Yeah. So is it something that you're likely to do now, you think? Or do you think you'll not be going back to it for a while?
No, I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to watch more of them anytime. I have nothing against them. And like I said, I actually really liked. Like I said, the score might not necessarily make you think that, but I liked it a lot. There were parts that I did really appreciate and parts that I really laughed at. It's just, it was a little bit, like I said, it's the retail bit that really drags it down and just makes it, collapse under its weight a bit in the middle, which is a shame because there's lots of good stuff here. So,
you did bring up the mannequin thing. I did like that gag.
He's imitating the mannequin, yeah.
Yeah, just, I like the look that he gives to the audience when he's taking it and he's just messing around with the punch clock. I think that's genius.
Fair enough. There's lots of good stuff. I mean, I went through them literally one by one, but I mentioned the ones that I did like and that made me laugh. And I would definitely watch this again, with that in mind and knowing now what to expect. Probably not for a little while, but I'd be keen to watch more, as you said, things I haven't seen first and see if a few gags do connect a little bit better in some other ones. So, yeah.
Nice one.
So, And so as the boy and girl walk off into a romantic sunset and we probably realize we're more like the poor soul still running from the law, it just remains for me to thank everybody who's listened to this episode. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you did, and if you have, please, give silent film a chance. What can we say? As well as giving our podcast a chance by checking out all of our links, which are in the episode description. Go via our link tree or any of the various social medias. You can just type in the name of our podcast or our names, I suppose, if you wanted to. And please do like, share, subscribe. We're having a bit of a struggle with numbers at the moment on YouTube in particular. So all support and help is very greatly appreciated, because we want to get this out to people, and we'd like to be popular, if that's okay with you. Shall we say we need to be a success so that we can start sending necklaces with chains to our loved ones. So please do, if you appreciate us, let us know. Write, comment, do all that good stuff. We appreciate you, so please appreciate us back. And thanks again to my right hand man DK for joining me on this one.
Not at all, mate. I have liked talking about this.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, I do, even if I don't love the film, to a 5 out of 5 level, I do enjoy talking about it, and I enjoyed watching it, and I like that you suggested it. So yeah, keep them coming. Keep the suggestions for classics coming, and even if it's just me and you, we'll chat about them.
No, that's including the audience, mate.
Exactly. At times it is, yes. But so did you have anything you wanted to plug? Anywhere people can find you?
No, just keep tuning into this channel, and for more good movie talk.
Awesome. Yeah, so stay tuned, because Silver Screen Regular Flavor is knee deep in the swamp of sorrow, the bog of eternal stench, and the lands of many Muppets for our 80s fantasy season. And you can always appreciate and enjoy that as well. Next month, we are hoping to offer you a classics episode you can't refuse via a deep dive into a truly iconic seminal work of pure cinema. Been delayed for a while as we try and get our heads around it, but we're hoping that's going to be coming next month. And until then, keep your nose clean, check your back for kick me signs, and don't start any climbs you don't intend to finish. Good night.
You have been listening to the Silver Screen Cinema Classics Show, part of the Silver Screen Podcast. Cinema Classics is hosted, produced, researched, scripted, and edited by Michael Wilson. Additional material by DK. Follow us on social media, our YouTube channel, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Links to all of these places can be found via the link tree in each episode's description. This podcast is a Media Matters original production created by Mike Wilson. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share far and wide. Join us again next time, and hopefully this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Here's looking at you, kid.